homeless girl is kicked out of a restaurant. What the billionaire owner did next shocked everyone. This wasn't just another case of the powerful dismissing the powerless. It was the moment that would transform two lives forever. This isn't just another rags to riches fairy tale. It's the true story of how a single moment of cruelty sparked a transformation so profound that it sent shockwaves through an entire city. What the billionaire restaurant owner did next didn't just surprise his employees and business partners. It left them absolutely stunned. Rain pounded against the windows of Lumiere, the most exclusive restaurant in the city. Inside, the wealthy dined on $200 steaks under crystal chandeliers. Outside, 17-year-old Maya huddled in the doorway, soaked to the bone, her few possessions clutched in a tattered backpack. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. The smell of food was overwhelming. With trembling hands, she pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped inside. The maitre d' froze mid-sentence, his smile vanishing as he took in Maya's dripping clothes and dirty face. Conversations halted. Forks paused mid-air. Every eye in the restaurant turned to stare. "Excuse me," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't want any trouble. I just need to get warm for a few minutes." The manager appeared instantly, his expression hardening. "This is a 5-star establishment, not a homeless shelter," he hissed, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "You're disturbing our guests. Leave immediately, or I'll call security." Maya's face burned with shame as diners whispered behind manicured hands. A woman clutched her purse closer, as if Maya might steal it. In the far corner, a man sat alone at a table set for one. Victor Harrington, billionaire owner of the Lumiere restaurant chain, watched the scene unfold over the rim of his whiskey glass. His cold eyes narrowed as the manager roughly escorted Maya toward the door, a hand hovering near her shoulder, careful not to actually touch her. For the first time in years, something flickered across Victor's usually impassive face. Was it anger? Disgust? Or something deeper? Something he'd buried long ago? What the restaurant staff didn't realize was that their simple act of cruelty had awakened something long dormant in the cold-hearted billionaire. A memory he'd spent his entire fortune trying to forget. Victor Harrington watched as the girl stumbled back into the rain, the heavy door swinging shut behind her. His fingers tightened around his whiskey glass. 30 years of building his restaurant empire had earned him a reputation as ruthless, calculating, and completely devoid of sentiment. Business associates called him the machine behind his back. He'd fired executives for showing weakness, closed profitable locations to prove points, and crushed competitors without remorse. Yet now, something unfamiliar stirred in his chest. A memory. A reflection of himself at 16, hungry, desperate, and alone. Without thinking, Victor stood up. His chair scraped loudly against the marble floor. Conversations around him faltered again as he strode toward the door, leaving his $300 meal untouched. "Mr. Harrington." The manager who had ejected the girl hurried after him. "Is something wrong with your meal? I can have the chef." Victor cut him off with a raised hand. "The girl, where did she go?" The manager blinked in confusion. "Sir, the homeless girl you just threw out. Where is she?" I don't know, sir. Probably the alley behind." Victor was already pushing through the door, the cold rain hitting his face. His $5,000 suit would be ruined. He didn't care. He spotted her huddled under the narrow overhang of a closed shop across the street, shivering violently. For a moment, he hesitated. What was he doing? This wasn't like him. This wasn't business. This wasn't rational. But for once in his life, Victor Harrington didn't listen to the calculating voice in his head. Instead, he stepped off the curb and into the rain, toward a decision that would change everything. Maya looked up as a shadow fell across her. Through the curtain of rain, she saw a tall figure in an expensive suit standing before her. Recognition flickered in her eyes. She'd noticed him watching from the corner table. His silver hair was now plastered to his forehead, and raindrops clung to his sharp jawline. Despite his disheveled appearance, there was something commanding about his presence. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice stronger than it had been inside. There was no fear in her tone, only weariness and defiance. She'd learned long ago that showing weakness on the streets was dangerous. Victor stood awkwardly in the downpour, water streaming down his face. For a man who commanded boardrooms and intimidated business rivals with a single glance, he suddenly found himself at a loss for words. The rehearsed speeches and calculated responses that had served him for decades seemed hollow now. "You shouldn't be out here," he finally said, immediately regretting how patronizing it sounded. Maya laughed bitterly, the sound harsh against the patter of rain. "Yeah, well, your restaurant made that pretty clear. But guess what? The whole city's made it clear. There's nowhere I'm supposed to be." She clutched her backpack tighter, as if it contained everything precious in her world. Perhaps it did. "My restaurant," Victor corrected. "I own it." The words came automatically, a reflex of a man accustomed to establishing his position in every conversation. Her eyes widened slightly, then narrowed with suspicion. A flash of recognition crossed her face. "Wait, you're Victor Harrington." She'd seen his photo in newspapers discarded on subway seats, on billboards advertising his latest ventures. "Come to personally make sure I stay away from your precious customers? Or is this some PR stunt? Take a photo with the homeless girl. Show everyone what a saint you are." "No." Victor hesitated, then gestured to the empty space beside her. "May I?" Without waiting for permission, he sat down on the wet concrete, his tailored pants soaking through instantly. Maya stared at him as if he'd lost his mind. Perhaps he had. In 30 years, Victor Harrington had never once sat on a sidewalk. He'd built his empire specifically to ensure he would never have to again. "I saw what happened in there," he said quietly. "It was unacceptable." "Which part? The part where your staff treated me like garbage? Or the part where your customers looked at me like I was something they'd scraped off their shoes?" Her voice cracked slightly. "Or maybe the part where the woman grabbed her purse like I was going to rob her right there under the chandeliers." Victor didn't flinch at her anger. He deserved it. All of it. A long silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of rain hitting the pavement and the occasional splash of cars driving through puddles. A neon sign across the street flickered, casting intermittent blue light across their faces. Maya shivered, pulling her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders. "You're going to catch pneumonia in that," Victor observed, nodding toward her soaked clothing. "Better than starving," Maya replied flatly. "At least pneumonia's quick." The brutal honesty of her statement hit Victor like a physical blow. He remembered that calculation, which suffering was preferable, which death less terrifying. "Why are you out here?" Maya finally asked, her curiosity getting the better of her. "People like you don't sit in gutters with people like me. You write checks to charities from the comfort of penthouses and feel good about yourselves." Victor looked straight ahead, into the rain. Memories he'd buried beneath wealth and power began to surface. "I used to be people like you." Maya studied his face, searching for a lie. Her eyes traced the perfect cut of his now ruined suit, the expensive watch on his wrist, the manicured hands that had never known manual labor. At least, not for many years. Right. And I'm secretly a princess, waiting for my royal family to find me. Not a princess, Victor said, turning to meet her gaze with unexpected intensity. But you could be something else, if you wanted to be. What's that supposed to mean? Her voice held equal parts suspicion and curiosity. She'd heard too many offers on the streets before, none of them good. Victor stood up, water streaming from his ruined suit. The restaurant's lights illuminated him from behind, creating a strange halo effect around his imposing figure. He extended his hand toward her, a hand that had closed billion-dollar deals and signed thousands of paychecks. It means I'm offering you a choice, he said, his voice steady despite the cold and rain. And I don't offer those very often. Maya stared at his outstretched hand. In the 17 difficult years of her life, she had learned that nothing came without a price. What kind of choice? The kind that changed my life once, Victor replied, when someone saw me as more than just a problem to be removed from sight. For a moment, the only sound was the rain. A taxi splashed by, its yellow reflection rippling in the puddles around them. Maya looked from Victor's hand to his face, searching for any sign of deception. What she saw instead surprised her. Vulnerability in the eyes of one of the most powerful men in the city. She reached for his hand. The interior of Victor's car was almost obscenely luxurious compared to the rain-soaked street they'd left behind. The leather seats were soft and warm, the air perfectly climate-controlled. Maya sat rigidly, afraid to touch anything, water pooling beneath her on the immaculate floor mats. She noticed everything. The subtle scent of leather and cedar, the whisper quiet engine, the small bar tucked discreetly into the side panel. This vehicle alone probably cost more than most people made in years. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice small in the cavernous back seat. Through the privacy partition, she could see the silhouette of a driver, silent and discreet. Her fingers nervously traced the edge of her backpack, the canvas worn thin from years of use. Inside were her only possessions: a change of clothes, a dog-eared paperback, a small photo album, and a pocket knife she'd carried since she was 12. Victor had removed his sodden jacket and loosened his tie. Even disheveled, he emanated authority. Raindrops still clung to his silver hair, and his white shirt had become translucent in places, clinging to a surprisingly fit frame for a man his age. "First, somewhere you can get warm and dry. Then we talk." Maya clutched her backpack tighter. "I'm not interested in charity." The words came out harsher than she intended, pride masking her fear. She'd learned early that accepting help often came with strings attached, strings that could become chains. "Good," Victor replied, surprising her. "Neither am I." He turned to look out the window, his profile sharp against the blur of city lights. "Charity is a transaction that diminishes the recipient. I'm interested in investments that appreciate over time." Maya frowned, uncertain what he meant. She studied his face, searching for any sign of deception or ulterior motive. The streets had taught her to read people quickly, a survival skill. Victor Harrington was difficult to read, his expressions controlled, his eyes revealing little. Yet there was something in the set of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders, that spoke of a man carrying old wounds beneath his expensive clothes. The car glided through the city streets, eventually pulling up to a towering glass building that seemed to pierce the night sky. The Harrington Tower, Victor's corporate headquarters and, On the top floors, his private residence. Maya had passed it countless times, never imagining she would ever set foot inside. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the city glistening under streetlights. "We're here," Victor said unnecessarily as the driver opened his door. He stepped out, then turned to wait for her. For a moment, Maya considered staying in the car, demanding to be taken back to the streets she knew. But curiosity and the promise of warmth won out. The lobby was a cathedral of marble and glass, sparsely populated at this late hour. A security guard nodded respectfully as Victor passed. "Good evening, Mr. Harrington." His eyes flickered to Maya with poorly concealed surprise, taking in her bedraggled appearance, but he said nothing. "Evening, Paul," Victor replied casually, as if bringing soaking wet teenagers to his penthouse was an everyday occurrence. Inside the private elevator that required Victor's fingerprint to access, Maya watched the floor numbers climb higher than she'd ever been in her life. 62, 63, 64. The digital display continued its ascent as her stomach lurched slightly, unused to the smooth, rapid elevation. The elevator walls were mirrored, and Maya caught glimpses of herself. Pale, thin, with dark circles under her eyes and hair plastered to her skull. Beside her, Victor stood straight and composed, seemingly untroubled by his own disheveled state. When the doors opened with a soft chime, they revealed a penthouse apartment that seemed to float above the city, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of lights stretching to the horizon. Maya stepped out hesitantly, overwhelmed by the space. The ceiling soared above them. The floors were polished concrete, softened by area rugs that probably cost more than cars, and minimalist furniture in shades of gray and black created islands of functionality in the vast room. "The bathroom is through there," Victor said, gesturing to a hallway. "You'll find clean towels and some clothes that should fit. They belong to my housekeeper's daughter." He paused, then added, "Elena is about your age. She's at college now, but she keeps some things here for when she visits." Maya hesitated, suspicion creeping back. "Why are you doing this?" Her eyes darted around the apartment, looking for clues to his character, his intentions. The place was immaculate, but strangely impersonal, like an upscale hotel suite rather than a home. No family photos, no mementos, just carefully selected art pieces and a few architectural awards displayed in a glass case. Victor walked to a wall of windows, looking out at his empire below. Rain still streaked the glass, distorting the city lights into watery halos. For a long moment, he was silent, his reflection superimposed over the cityscape like a specter. "Get cleaned up, then I'll explain." The bathroom was larger than any room Maya had slept in for years. Marble and glass everywhere, a shower with multiple heads, a soaking tub that could fit 3 people, heated floors beneath her bare feet. She stood frozen for a moment, overwhelmed by the luxury before stripping off her wet clothes. The hot water was a revelation, endless and perfectly pressured. She stood under the spray until her skin turned pink, washing away weeks of grime with expensive soap that smelled of sandalwood and citrus. True to Victor's word, she found clean clothes folded neatly on a shelf. Soft jeans, a simple t-shirt, a hoodie, even new underwear with tags still attached. They fit well enough, slightly loose on her underfed frame. She looked at herself in the steamy mirror, hardly recognizing the person staring back. Clean, with her dark hair dripping onto borrowed clothes, she looked younger, more vulnerable, more like the girl she might have been in another life. 30 minutes later, Maya emerged in borrowed clothes, her hair still damp but clean. She found Victor in what appeared to be his office. A minimalist space with a single desk and 3 monitors displaying financial data, stock charts, and what looked like architectural plans for a new building. He'd changed into dry clothes as well. Simple black pants and a gray cashmere sweater that probably cost more than everything Maya had ever owned. "Sit," he said, indicating a chair across from him. When she did, he pressed a button on his desk, and a section of the wall slid open to reveal a small kitchen. "Are you hungry?" Maya's stomach answered for her with an audible growl. She hadn't eaten since morning, half a bagel scavenged from a cafe trash can. Victor nodded and returned moments later with a simple sandwich and a glass of water, which he placed before her without ceremony. "Eat first, then we talk." Maya devoured the food, trying to maintain some dignity but failing as hunger took over. The sandwich was nothing special. Turkey, cheese, lettuce on sourdough, but it tasted better than anything she could remember. Victor waited patiently, his expression unreadable. He didn't stare at her while she ate, instead focusing on one of his monitors, occasionally typing something on a sleek keyboard. When she finished, he closed whatever he was working on and leaned forward, hands clasped on the desk. The office lights cast shadows across his face, emphasizing the lines around his eyes and mouth. Signs of age, but also of stress and responsibility. 17 years ago, he began, his voice lower and more intimate than before. I was sitting in a diner in Chicago at 3 in the morning. I had 78 cents to my name and nowhere to sleep. It was January, 10 degrees below zero, and I hadn't eaten in 2 days. His eyes took on a distant look, seeing something far away in time. My mother had died 6 months earlier, cancer. No insurance. The medical bills took everything we had, and then the landlord took the rest when I couldn't make rent. Maya listened, wary but intrigued. This wasn't the biography she'd read snippets of in business magazines. The owner was about to throw me out when a man sat down across from me, just like I'm sitting across from you now. Victor's finger tapped once on the desk, the only sign of emotion in his otherwise controlled demeanor. That man was Roland Pierce. He owned restaurants across the Midwest, not fancy places, just good, solid diners and family restaurants. 26 locations at the time. Victor stood up suddenly and walked to a small bar in the corner. He poured himself 2 fingers of amber liquid, but didn't drink immediately. He looked at me, this skinny, desperate kid, and said he saw potential. Said I had hungry eyes, but not just for food. Hungry for something more. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. He offered me a job washing dishes. Minimum wage plus 1 meal per shift and a cot in the storage room until I could afford a place. He returned to his seat, the glass untouched in his hand. Within a year, I was managing the kitchen. In 5 years, I owned my first restaurant. When he died, I bought his entire company. Victor finally took a sip of his drink. The first thing I did was rename it Pierce Hospitality Group. It's still the parent company of everything I own. Victor's eyes had a faraway look. Roland changed my life because he saw something in me worth investing in. Not charity, investment. He used to say, I'm not giving you anything except opportunity. What you build with it is yours. He set down his glass. He was right. Everything I built myself, but I never would have had the chance without that first opportunity. He refocused on Maya, his gaze intense. I'm offering you the same thing, not a handout, a starting point. Why me? Maya asked, voicing the question that had been burning since they left the rain-soaked street. There are thousands of homeless people in this city. What makes me special? Her tone was challenging, almost defensive. Because tonight, you reminded me of a debt I've never repaid. Victor answered simply. When you walked into my restaurant, soaking wet and desperate, but still standing tall, I saw myself. His eyes narrowed slightly. And because I recognize that look in your eyes, it's the same one I had. Too stubborn to beg, too proud to give up, smart enough to know there has to be something better. He studied her for a moment. How old are you, Maya? 17, she answered, then added defiantly, almost 18. And school? She shrugged. Dropped out last year, had to work, then lost my job when the cafe closed, then lost my room when I couldn't pay rent. The familiar story of cascading disasters that led to the streets. One misfortune toppling into another until everything collapsed. Victor nodded, as if confirming something to himself. He reached into a drawer and removed a small key, sliding it across the desk toward her. It was attached to a simple silver keychain with an address engraved on it. This opens an apartment in a building I own 6 blocks from here. It's nothing fancy, a studio with basic furniture. The refrigerator is stocked. There's a phone with my private number programmed in. His finger tapped the desk again. It's safe. The building has security. No one will bother you there. Maya stared at the key without touching it. It gleamed under the office lights, a small piece of metal that represented something she hadn't had in months. Safety, privacy, dignity. It seemed too good to be true, which in her experience meant it probably was. And what do you want in return? Her voice was flat, expecting the catch. There was always a catch. 3 things, Victor replied, holding up his fingers to count them off. First, you finish high school or get your GED. I'll arrange the paperwork, tutoring if you need it. He lowered one finger. Second, you work at one of my restaurants, starting at the bottom like I did. Dishwasher, busser, whatever needs doing. Minimum wage plus tips, regular hours that work around your school schedule. He lowered another finger. Third, when you're successful, not if, when, you find someone else to invest in. You pass it forward. His hand closed into a loose fist. Those are my terms. Maya's eyes narrowed. That's it? No. Other expectations? The implication was clear in her tone. Victor's expression hardened. I'm offering you a business arrangement, not that. He looked genuinely offended. I have a daughter your age. If anyone ever made such a proposal to her, I'd break their fingers. The vehemence in his voice convinced Maya more than his words. She'd gotten good at spotting predators, and Victor Harrington, whatever else he might be, didn't register as one. He leaned back in his chair. The apartment is yours for 1 year. After that, you're on your own. Sink or swim based on your own merit. I'm offering opportunity, not a free ride. His eyes locked with hers. You'll work hard. You'll study hard. You'll probably want to quit at least once a week. I won't stop you if you do. Your choice, your consequences. Maya finally reached for the key, turning it over in her fingers. The metal was cool and weighty, substantial, real. And if I say no, then I call you a taxi to wherever you want to go. Give you enough cash for a week at a decent hotel, and we never see each other again. Victor shrugged. Your choice. But I think you're smart enough to recognize a good deal when you see one. The city lights twinkled beyond the windows, a constellation of possibilities Maya had never dared consider. Streets and buildings she'd only seen from below, now spread out before her like a map of potential futures. She closed her fingers around the key, feeling its edges press into her palm. When do I start? Victor checked his watch. A simple, elegant timepiece that probably cost more than a car. It's nearly midnight. Tonight you sleep. Tomorrow at 10, Elena, my housekeeper, will take you shopping for necessities. At noon, you meet with my assistant to handle paperwork, ID, bank account, school enrollment. He spoke efficiently, laying out a plan with the precision of someone accustomed to orchestrating complex operations. Monday morning, you start work at the West Side Grill. It's casual dining, good staff, 4 blocks from your apartment. Maya nodded, a little dazed by how quickly her life was being rearranged. Just hours ago, she'd been contemplating which doorway might offer the best shelter from the rain. Now she was sitting in a penthouse, holding a key to her own apartment, with a job and education suddenly back on the horizon. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked again, needing to understand. Victor was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice had lost some of its businesslike edge. "Because 17 years ago, I made a promise in a Chicago diner. Roland Pierce saved my life, and I promised I would do the same for someone else someday." He looked out at the city, his city in many ways. "I've built buildings, I've made money, I've created jobs, but I've never properly repaid that debt." He turned back to Maya, his expression softening slightly. "Until tonight." The apartment was exactly as Victor had described it. A studio, nothing fancy. But to Maya, it was a palace. Located on the 3rd floor of a well-maintained building, it had high ceilings, hardwood floors, and a wall of windows that faced east, ensuring morning sunlight. A queen-sized bed occupied one corner, a small dining table with 2 chairs another. The kitchenette was compact but functional, with a refrigerator that hummed quietly, stocked with enough food to last a week. A modest bookshelf stood against one wall, half filled with paperbacks. Mysteries, classics, and a few textbooks. Someone had placed a small potted plant on the windowsill, its green leaves reaching toward the glass. Maya stood in the center of the room, still clutching her backpack, afraid that if she set it down, everything would disappear. The key felt strange in her hand, heavy with responsibility and possibility. She traced the teeth of it with her fingertip, still warm from being clutched in her palm during the entire car ride from Victor's penthouse. "Is it suitable?" Victor asked from the doorway. He hadn't planned to accompany her to the apartment, but something in her expression when they'd pulled up to the building had made him change his mind. Perhaps it was the momentary flash of panic, the look of someone who couldn't quite believe their good fortune and was waiting for the other shoe to drop. He recognized that look, had seen it in his own reflection decades ago. "It's more than suitable," Maya replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She moved to touch the back of a chair, the countertop, the soft throw blanket folded at the foot of the bed, as if confirming their solidity. The blanket was a deep blue, woven with a subtle pattern that reminded her of waves. "It's beautiful." Victor watched her with an unreadable expression. He stood perfectly still in the doorway, hands in the pockets of his tailored pants, his presence commanding even in this modest space. The apartment, while simple by his standards, was clean and well-appointed, one of several units he maintained for visiting executives or, occasionally, for situations like this one. The building superintendent is Mr. Gaines. 1st floor, apartment 1A. If anything needs fixing, call him. His number is by the phone. He gestured to a simple landline on a small desk in the corner. That phone is for emergencies and necessary communications. My number is programmed in, as is Elena's and Mr. Gaines. Maya nodded, still taking in her surroundings. A door near the kitchen led to a bathroom, small but clean, with a shower tub combination. a medicine cabinet stocked with basic toiletries, and fluffy white towels hanging from a rack. She peeked inside, noting the subtle scent of lemon cleaning products and the gleam of the fixtures. After months of using public restrooms or shelter facilities shared with dozens of others, the privacy of her own bathroom seemed almost unimaginable. "There's a laundry room in the basement. Your key works for it too." Victor remained in the doorway, maintaining a respectful distance. His eyes tracked Maya as she moved around the space, noting her reactions, the way her fingers lingered on surfaces as if to convince herself they were real. The building has security cameras in the common areas and an intercom system for visitors. No one gets in without being buzzed in by a resident or using a key. The security measures were mentioned casually, but Maya understood their significance. Safety, real safety, was a luxury she hadn't experienced in months. She'd learned to sleep with one eye open, to keep her few valuables close to her body, to wake at the slightest sound. The promise of a locked door that only she could open made her throat tighten unexpectedly. "Elena will be here at 10 tomorrow to take you shopping. Clothes, school supplies, whatever else you need to get started." Victor's tone was matter-of-fact, as if arranging new wardrobes for homeless teenagers was a regular part of his schedule. "I can't pay for—" Maya began, but Victor cut her off with a raised hand. "Consider it an advance on your first paycheck. You'll work it off." His tone brooked no argument. This wasn't charity. It was business. "Speaking of which, this is yours." He removed an envelope from his jacket and placed it on the counter. "It contains $500 in cash, a temporary ID card that will get you into the building and identify you as an employee of Pierce Hospitality Group, and a list of phone numbers you might need." Maya stared at the envelope, then at Victor. $500 was more cash than she'd seen in months. On the streets, such a sum could be the difference between life and death. She approached the counter cautiously, touching the edge of the envelope but not opening it. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, hating how inadequate the words sounded. "How did you thank someone for plucking you from the gutter and giving you a chance at a real life?" What words could possibly encompass the magnitude of such an intervention? "Don't thank me," he replied firmly. "Prove me right." He checked his watch, then straightened his jacket. "I should go. You need rest, and I have an early meeting tomorrow." He turned to leave, but paused at the threshold. For a moment, he seemed to be considering his words carefully, weighing what needed to be said against what might be too much. "One more thing, Maya. This opportunity is yours to use or waste. I won't be checking up on you or holding your hand. If you don't show up for work, if you don't attend school, if you make poor choices, that's on you. I'm giving you a door. Whether you walk through it is your decision." The words weren't harsh, merely factual. Victor Harrington wasn't offering to be her savior or her father figure. He was offering her a chance, nothing more, nothing less. In some ways, that made it more valuable. This wasn't about his ego or his need to feel good about himself. This was about potential, hers, and whether she would fulfill it. With that, he was gone, his footsteps receding down the hallway. Maya listened until she could no longer hear them, then slowly sank onto the edge of the bed. The mattress was firm but comfortable, so different from the cardboard and concrete she'd grown accustomed to. She bounced slightly, testing it, then ran her hand over the crisp, clean sheets. They smelled faintly of lavender. For a long moment, she sat perfectly still, afraid that any movement might shatter this fragile new reality. Then, carefully, she set her backpack down beside her and lay back on the bed, staring up at the ceiling. It was smooth and white, without the water stains and cracks she'd become accustomed to in shelters, or the open sky she'd faced on nights when no shelter was available. For the first time in months, Maya allowed herself to cry, not from sadness or fear, but from a complex mixture of relief, disbelief, and the overwhelming sense that her life had just been divided into before and after. The tears came silently at first, then in heaving sobs that shook her thin frame. She cried for the girl she'd been before homelessness, for the hardness she'd developed to survive, for the future she'd nearly lost, and for the second chance that had appeared in the most unlikely form. A stern businessman with rain-soaked hair and a debt to repay. When the tears finally subsided, Maya sat up and wiped her face with the back of her hand. The room had grown darker, the city outside transitioning from day to evening. She stood and moved to the windows, looking out at a view so different from the street-level perspective she'd grown accustomed to. From 3 floors up, the city looked almost beautiful. Lights beginning to twinkle in windows, people hurrying home, traffic flowing in orderly patterns. Her stomach growled, reminding her that despite the sandwich at Victor's penthouse, she was still undernourished from months of irregular meals. The refrigerator beckoned. Maya opened it cautiously, as if expecting it to be empty despite what Victor had said. Instead, she found it well stocked with basics. Eggs, milk, cheese, vegetables, fruit, bread, even a few frozen meals in the small freezer compartment. She ran her fingers over the items, selecting an apple first, crisp and red and perfect. She bit into it, juice running down her chin, the sweetness almost overwhelming after so long without fresh fruit. Next came a yogurt, then some cheese and crackers she found in a cabinet. She ate standing up at the counter, unable to believe that all of this food was hers, that she didn't have to ration it or hide it or worry about where the next meal would come from. After eating, Maya explored the apartment more thoroughly. The closet contained a few hangers, empty and waiting. The desk drawer held pens, paper, and a small calculator. The bookshelf offered an eclectic selection, someone's cast-offs perhaps, or books purchased specifically to fill the space. She pulled out a worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, remembering reading it in school before everything fell apart. In the bathroom, she discovered more treasures: shampoo, conditioner, soap, toothpaste, even a new toothbrush still in its packaging. A small first aid kit sat on the top shelf of the medicine cabinet. Maya opened it to find bandages, antiseptic wipes, pain relievers. She thought of the cuts and bruises she'd accumulated on the streets, the times she'd had to clean wounds with whatever was available, the infections she'd fought off through sheer determination. As night fell completely, Maya turned on lamps, reveling in the ability to banish darkness with the flick of a switch. She found the thermostat and adjusted it slightly, marveling at the luxury of controlled temperature. Then she returned to the bed, sitting cross-legged in the center of it, her few possessions spread around her. From her backpack, she withdrew the items that had sustained her through homelessness. The paperback, a dog-eared copy of The Outsiders, a small photo album containing pictures of her mother before illness had claimed her, a pocket knife given to her by a friend who disappeared from the shelter system months ago, a journal half filled with her cramped handwriting, and a smooth stone she'd found on a rare trip to the beach, carried as a talisman of better days. These items, so precious when they were all she had, seemed shabby and inadequate in this new setting. Yet they were hers, connections to a past that, despite its hardships, had shaped her. Maya arranged them carefully on the nightstand, a bridge between who she had been and who she might become. The journal drew her attention. She opened it to the last entry, dated 3 days earlier. Another day, another doorway. Johnson Street this time. Behind the old theater. Safer than the park. Met a girl today, maybe 14, definitely too young for this life. Shared my granola bar with her. Told her about the youth shelter on 9th, but she's scared of social services. Can't blame her. Sometimes the system is worse than the streets. Rain tonight, always harder in the rain. Maya stared at the words, written in a different lifetime. She turned to a fresh page and uncapped the pen she'd found in the desk drawer. Everything changed today. I met a man named Victor Harrington. She wrote until her hand cramped, pouring out the events of the day, her fears, her hopes, her suspicions, her gratitude. When she finally set the pen down, it was past midnight. Exhaustion washed over her, the kind that comes after emotional catharsis rather than physical exertion. Maya showered again, because she could, because hot water on demand was a miracle she couldn't get enough of. Then slipped into the oversized t-shirt she'd been using as pajamas for months. The bed beckoned, clean sheets and a proper mattress, promising the first real rest she'd had in longer than she could remember. As she settled under the covers, Maya realized she'd forgotten something. She rose and crossed to the door, checking that it was locked. She tested the knob twice, then engaged the deadbolt and slid the chain into place. Only then did she return to bed, the knowledge that she was truly secure, allowing her muscles to relax fully for the first time in months. Sleep came quickly, dreamless and deep. The morning came with golden light streaming through windows she'd forgotten to cover. Maya woke disoriented, momentarily panicked until memory returned. The restaurant, the rain, Victor Harrington's unexpected offer. The apartment. Her apartment, at least for now. She lay still for a moment, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the building, water running through pipes, a door closing somewhere down the hall, the distant hum of the elevator. Normal sounds, domestic sounds. So different from the harsh soundtrack of the streets, traffic, arguments, sirens, the constant vigilance for approaching footsteps. Maya stretched, her body registering the novelty of waking without stiffness from hard ground or cramped positions. The clock on the nightstand showed 8:17 a.m. She had almost 2 hours before Elena would arrive. She showered again, luxuriating in hot water and privacy, then dressed in the borrowed clothes from the night before. They felt less fresh now, but they were cleaner than anything she'd worn in weeks. Tomorrow, apparently, she would have new clothes, another concept that seemed almost too good to be true. The refrigerator yielded orange juice, bread for toast, even a carton of eggs. She cooked herself a proper breakfast for the first time in months. The simple act of cracking eggs into a pan and watching them sizzle, feeling like a forgotten art rediscovered. She ate at the small table while watching the city come alive below her. Window. People walking dogs, hurrying to work, living normal lives that had seemed so distant from her reality just a day ago. After breakfast, Maya washed her dishes carefully and wiped down the counters. If this opportunity was temporary, and Victor had made it clear that it was, she was determined to treat everything with respect. Nothing would be taken for granted, nothing wasted or damaged through carelessness. With time still to spare before Elena's arrival, Maya sat at the desk and opened the envelope Victor had left. Inside, as promised, she found 5 crisp $100 bills, a temporary ID card with her name and photo, taken from her last school ID, she realized with surprise, and a neatly typed list of contacts: Victor's private line, his assistant Diane, Elena, Mr. Gaines the superintendent, and the main number for the West Side Grill, where she would apparently begin work on Monday. Also included was an address, 456 Madison Avenue, Suite 1200, with instructions to meet Diane Cho there at noon. Maya studied the ID card, noting the Pierce Hospitality Group logo in the corner, a stylized P formed to resemble a serving dish with a cover. The temporary nature of the card was indicated by an expiration date just 2 weeks away. By then, presumably, she would have proper identification. The money gave her pause. $500 was a fortune in her current circumstances. She counted it twice, then carefully separated it. $400 back into the envelope, which she hid between the mattress and box spring, and $100 in her pocket for whatever expenses might arise during shopping with Elena. At precisely 10 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. Maya hesitated before opening it, still half expecting to discover that everything had been an elaborate dream or cruel joke. She checked the peephole first, another habit from harder times, before unlocking the door. Elena Vasquez was a short, sturdy woman in her 50s with salt and pepper hair pulled back in a practical bun. Her eyes were sharp and assessing, but not unkind. Laugh lines framed her mouth, and her hands showed the slight roughness of someone who worked hard for a living. She wore simple black pants, a burgundy blouse, and comfortable shoes, with a gold cross hanging from a chain around her neck. "You must be Maya," she said, her voice carrying a hint of an accent. "I'm Elena. Mr. Harrington asked me to help you get settled." She carried a large tote bag over one shoulder and a measuring tape around her neck. "May I come in?" Maya stepped aside, suddenly self-conscious about the apartment, though she'd done nothing to make it messy in the few hours she'd been there. She watched Elena's face for signs of judgment or pity, but saw only professional efficiency. Elena entered with the confidence of someone accustomed to managing households. She set her bag down and turned to Maya with a professional smile. "First things first, I need to take your measurements so we can get you proper clothes. Then we'll make a list of what else you need." Without waiting for a response, Elena extracted a notepad from her bag and began jotting down categories. Clothing, toiletries, school supplies, household items. "Mr. Harrington said this was an advance on my paycheck," Maya said carefully. "I don't want to spend too much." Elena looked up, her expression softening slightly. "Mr. Harrington has authorized what's necessary to get you properly established. He's not a man who does things halfway." She tapped her pen against the notepad. "But I appreciate your concern about costs. We'll be practical, not extravagant." The next few hours passed in a whirlwind. Elena was efficient but thorough, helping Maya create a list of necessities without being intrusive or judgmental. She took measurements with professional detachment, noting them in her book without comment on Maya's too thin frame. "You're about my daughter's size, perhaps a bit taller," Elena remarked as she put away her measuring tape. "She left some clothes here when she went to college. They might do until we get you your own things." By noon, they were in a department store, Elena guiding Maya through selections of practical clothing, school supplies, and personal items. Maya had never been much interested in fashion, even before homelessness. But Elena insisted on basics that fit properly and would last: jeans, t-shirts, a few blouses, undergarments, socks, a light jacket, and a warmer coat. "Winter will be here before you know it," Elena said practically. "Mr. Harrington said you start work on Monday," Elena remarked as they examined a pair of sensible black shoes. "The West Side Grill is casual, but you'll need non-slip shoes for kitchen work." "Have you worked for him long?" Maya asked, curious about the man who had so dramatically altered her trajectory. She tried on the shoes, surprised by how good it felt to have footwear that wasn't worn down and didn't pinch. Elena's expression softened slightly. 22 years, since before he was wealthy, I was the first person he hired when he opened his first restaurant in this city. She selected a pair of shoes and added them to their growing collection. He's a good employer. Demanding, yes, but fair. He rewards hard work. Maya nodded, filing this information away. Victor Harrington was becoming more complex with each new detail. A demanding boss, but a fair one. A wealthy man who remembered his humble beginnings. Someone who kept employees for decades in an industry known for high turnover. And your daughter? Victor mentioned she's in college. Maya followed Elena to the school supplies section, where they selected notebooks, pens, and a calculator. Maria, Elena confirmed with unmistakable pride. Pre-med at Columbia. Mr. Harrington helped with her scholarship. She gave Maya a knowing look. He sees potential in people. If he's offering you an opportunity, it's because he believes you can succeed. The statement carried weight coming from someone who had known Victor for so long. Maya wondered what he had seen in her, a bedraggled, defensive teenager in a fancy restaurant, that had prompted such generosity. What potential did he perceive that she herself couldn't always see? Is he always so intense? Maya asked, remembering Victor's piercing gaze, his directness, the way he seemed to evaluate everything and everyone with calculating efficiency. Elena laughed, a warm sound that softened her professional demeanor. Always. He doesn't know any other way to be. She selected a backpack from a display, testing its straps and zippers with practiced hands. When Maria was applying to colleges, he reviewed her essays himself, sent them back 3 times for revisions before he was satisfied. She was furious with him at the time. Elena smiled at the memory. Now she thanks him. She got into every school she applied to. By late afternoon, Maya returned to her apartment with bags of new possessions. Simple but good quality clothes, toiletries, school supplies, and even a refurbished laptop Elena had produced from her seemingly bottomless tote bag. Mr. Harrington said you'll need this for school, Elena explained. It's nothing fancy, but it will do the job. Maya ran her fingers over the laptop's surface, overwhelmed by the generosity while simultaneously understanding that this, too, was an investment rather than charity. A tool for success rather than a gift. The distinction mattered, to Victor clearly, but also to Maya herself. She didn't want to be a charity case. She wanted to be worth investing in. After Elena left, promising to check in the following week, Maya carefully arranged her new belongings in the apartment. She hung clothes in the small closet, lined up toiletries in the bathroom, placed the laptop on the desk. Each item represented not just a material possession, but a step toward a different kind of life. The new clothes felt strange against her skin. Clean, properly sized, without the worn spots and small tears she'd grown accustomed to. She changed into a simple outfit, jeans, a blue t-shirt, and the new shoes, preparing for her meeting with Diane Cho. Before leaving, she studied herself in the bathroom mirror. The girl who looked back was still thin, still carried shadows under her eyes, still wore her dark hair too long and slightly uneven from cutting it herself. But she was clean, properly dressed, and standing straighter than she had in months. Not quite transformed, but beginning to remember who she had been before survival became her only goal. The address Victor had provided was a 15-minute walk away, an office building in the business district, gleaming glass and steel rising toward the sky. Maya arrived early, suddenly nervous about meeting Victor's assistant. Would the woman look at her with the same disdain as the restaurant hostess had? Would she question Victor's decision to invest in a homeless teenager? The lobby was imposing. Marble floors, a security desk, men and women in business attire striding purposefully toward elevators. Maya approached the desk hesitantly, showing her temporary ID. "I have an appointment with Diane Cho," she said, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "Pierce Hospitality Group, 12th floor." The security guard examined her ID, then checked a list on his computer. "Maya Thompson?" When she nodded, he handed her a visitor's badge. "Elevator Bank B, 12th floor. Ms. Cho's office is to the right when you exit." The elevator was crowded with professionals, lawyers, executives, consultants, all engaged with phones or quiet conversations. Maya pressed herself into a corner, acutely aware of her newness, her otherness, despite the clean clothes and washed hair. When the doors opened on the 12th floor, she nearly sighed with relief. The Pierce Hospitality Group offices were understated but elegant. Warm wood tones, comfortable seating in a small reception area, black and white photographs of restaurants and food on the walls. A receptionist looked up as Maya approached. "I'm here to see Diane Cho," Maya said, showing her ID again. "My name is Maya Thompson." "Of course," the receptionist replied with a professional smile. "Ms. Cho is expecting you. Please have a seat. She'll be with you shortly." Maya had barely settled into one of the comfortable chairs when a door opened and a woman emerged. Tall, slender, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, her black hair cut in a precise bob. She appeared to be in her late 30s, with an air of quiet competence. "Maya, I'm Diane Cho." Her handshake was firm, her smile genuine if reserved. "Please come in." Diane's office was organized and efficient, much like the woman herself. She gestured for Maya to take a seat across from her desk, then sat down and opened a folder. "Mr. Harrington has briefed me on your situation," she said, without preamble. "Today we need to handle several matters: employment paperwork, school enrollment, and establishing a bank account for your wages. I've prepared everything we need." For the next 2 hours, Maya filled out forms, signed documents, and answered questions about her education history. Diane was thorough, but not invasive, asking only what was necessary for the paperwork without prying into the circumstances that had led Maya to homelessness. "You'll be enrolled at Westside Community High School," Diane explained as she completed an online form. "It's 4 blocks from your apartment and has a flexible schedule designed for working students. Mr. Harrington has arranged for you to meet with a counselor on Monday morning to assess which credits you have and what you'll need to complete your diploma." Maya nodded, a mixture of anticipation and anxiety churning in her stomach. School had once been a refuge, a place where she excelled. Then it had become impossible to maintain as her home life collapsed. The thought of returning was both exciting and terrifying. "As for your employment," Diane continued, "you'll be working at the West Side Grill initially. 20 hours per week to start, scheduled around your classes. Minimum wage plus tips, paid bi-weekly by direct deposit." She slid another form across the desk. "This authorizes the establishment of your bank account. Pierce Hospitality Group has an arrangement with First City Bank for employee accounts. No minimum balance, no fees." Maya signed where indicated, the reality of her new situation becoming more concrete with each signature. A job, a bank account, school enrollment, the framework of a normal life, constructed in a single afternoon after months of chaos. "One last thing," Diane said, reaching into a drawer. She produced a smartphone in a simple case. "This is a company phone, basic model with limited data. It's primarily for work communications and emergencies, but you may use it for personal calls as well, within reason." She demonstrated how to turn it on, showing that it was already programmed with important contacts: Victor, Elena, Diane herself, and the West Side Grill. "I can't," Maya began, overwhelmed by yet another expensive item being handed to her. "You can and you will," Diane interrupted firmly. "This isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. You need to be reachable for work and school. The phone remains company property. You're just its user." Put that way, Maya could accept it. Another tool, another investment in her success rather than a gift. She took the phone carefully, slipping it into her pocket. "Mr. Harrington mentioned you've been without stable housing for some time," Diane said, choosing her words carefully. "If you need referrals to healthcare providers or other support services, I can arrange that as well." Maya considered the offer. Her health had suffered during her months on the streets. Nothing serious, but she was underweight, had a persistent cough, and hadn't seen a dentist in over a year. "That might be helpful," she admitted. Diane nodded, making a note. "I'll email you a list of providers who accept the insurance you'll have through your employment. It takes effect after 30 days. She closed the folder and looked directly at Maya for the first time without the barrier of paperwork between them. "Mr. Harrington doesn't do this often." The statement hung in the air, neither a question nor an accusation, but something in between. "I know," Maya replied quietly. "I don't understand why he chose me." Diane's expression softened slightly. "In the 15 years I've worked for him, he's done something like this exactly twice before. Both times the people he helped have gone on to significant success." She straightened a pen on her desk. "He has an eye for potential, and he believes in repaying debts, even ones that aren't his." Before Maya could ask what she meant, Diane stood, signaling the end of their meeting. "You start work Monday at 4 p.m. Report to Michael Reeves, the manager. Your school appointment is at 9 a.m. with Counselor Patel." She handed Maya a folder containing copies of all the paperwork they'd completed. "If you have questions, call me. My direct line is programmed into your phone." As evening fell, she sat at the window watching the city lights come on, one by one. Somewhere out there, other teenagers were living on the streets, just as she had been 24 hours ago. The knowledge sat heavily in her chest. The randomness of fortune, the thin line between desperation and opportunity. The new phone sat on the windowsill beside her, its presence both reassuring and strange. A lifeline, a connection to this new reality that still felt like it might dissolve at any moment. Maya picked it up, exploring its features. It was nothing fancy, as Diane had said, but it was new and functional. A vast improvement over the prepaid phone she'd lost months ago when she couldn't afford to add more minutes. The phone rang, startling her from her thoughts. The screen displayed V. Harrington. She answered hesitantly. "Hello?" "Maya." Victor's voice was instantly recognizable. Direct, authoritative, but not unkind. "Just checking that everything is in order. Did Elena take care of what you needed?" "Yes," Maya replied, surprised by the call. "Everything's fine, thank you." "Good." There was a brief pause, the sound of papers being shuffled in the background. "Diane tells me the paperwork is complete. Your school enrollment is processed, and your employment file is set up." "Yes, she was very thorough," Maya confirmed, unsure what else to say. Small talk seemed impossible with Victor Harrington. "Your meeting with my assistant tomorrow is at noon. Her name is Diane Cho. She'll handle the paperwork for your school enrollment and employment. The address is in the envelope I gave you." Maya blinked, confused. "I already met with her. Today." We completed everything. There was a pause, then what might have been a short laugh. Of course, I apologize. I've been in meetings all day, lost track of time. It was a small crack in his perfect efficiency, almost humanizing. I'll be at work on Monday, Maya promised. And school in the morning. I know you will. There was something in his tone, not quite warmth, but perhaps approval. This is an investment, Maya. In business, we protect our investments. We ensure they have what they need to succeed. Another pause. But ultimately, the return depends on the inherent value and potential of what we've invested in. The message was clear. He had provided the opportunity, but what she made of it was entirely up to her. I understand, she said quietly. I won't waste this chance. Good. The word was simple but carried weight. Good night, Maya. The line went dead before she could respond. Maya replaced the phone on the windowsill, contemplating the brief conversation. Victor Harrington was an enigma. Brusque, yet generous. Distant, yet involved. She wondered what had happened in the years between that Chicago diner and now to shape him into the man he'd become. She returned to the window, gazing out at the city that had been so hostile just yesterday and now seemed full of possibility. Tomorrow would bring not paperwork and formalities, as she'd thought, but a day to prepare herself mentally for the coming changes. Monday would bring work, real work, with a paycheck and responsibilities. And school, a return to education she'd thought might be permanently beyond her reach. For tonight, though, Maya simply allowed herself to exist in this moment of transition. No longer homeless, not yet established. Suspended between her past and whatever future she would build from Victor Harrington's unexpected investment. She placed her palm against the cool glass of the window, her reflection superimposed over the city lights. In the glass, she could see both herself and the world beyond. The perfect metaphor for where she stood now, on the threshold between what had been and what might be. Don't waste this, she whispered to herself. Don't you dare waste this.